Aloha and welcome to another episode of Maunalua, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Kendrick Chang, a 12th grade senior at Henry J. Kaiser High School, and today I'll be your host. And joining me today is my teacher, Mr. Paul Balazs. Paul, why don't you start by giving a little background about yourself?
Sure. I'm originally from Hawaii Kai. I grew up in Mariners Village 3. I went to actually Marino for high school. Lived in Kailua, Manoa, and Kaimaki. I wanted to be an educator, really early on in my life. I had my father's a marine biologist, George Balazs. My mom's a social worker, and they've both given a lot back to their their communities respectively, environmentally and socially. They really raised me to always be in a mindset of giving before taking, and it led me to education. I was offered a job at a school right out of high school. I was offered a job at a variety school doing special needs, special education, and that became a focal point of pretty much my entire college career. Going through college and going through the changes, growing up, and really figuring out what I wanted to do in life. And as far as environment goes and education, I saw a great need tying the two in together, tying education and the environment together. And I ended at University of Hawaii, Manoa, with a degree in secondary education, and I knew that I wanted to to take my interests and my background and in the environment and growing up in a water household and a great love for the water. I wanted to tie that into my education, and I became an English teacher because I felt that writing was my strength, my way to really my vehicle for teaching children and getting children to learn a little bit more about the environment. And anyway, so I got a great job at Kaiser High School, and it's been a really fun ride at the school so far.
And speaking about Kaiser High School, for many viewers who may not be aware that Hawaii Kai really started out as a fish pond community, sure. And our namesake Kaiser High School was named after Henry J. Kaiser, the developer who developed our community. And since you grew up in our community, any perspective as far as being a teacher of a school?
Absolutely. The generation now, especially the kids that I'm teaching, the kids that I work with on a daily basis, they grew up in the 90s, and at that point it was, all of the shopping centers and the condos, the townhomes, all of it was already established. It had already been built. I remember as a child riding my bike through what is now Costco, and riding my bike through what is now the condos across from Kaiser High School. That area, everything's changed. And they've begun developing the land, further back into the farms, behind the post office. The students have a different perspective of the world. Their entire world is different. Their environment's different. It's not what we've known. And if we, this mentality of taking what you see as what reality is, and not looking back to what it was and how far we've come, and not just the positives, socially and as far as community, which is really important. I believe that Hawaii Kai is a great community, with a lot of strong and active members, but also negatively, as far as development goes, what haven't we done to ensure that the environment will be there for the future? It's really important for the students to see, and hear the stories, of the past, and how far we've come in such a little time, and what the impact it's made, especially on the bay. Those ditches and those canals that lead up into each of the valleys. They run a lot of the debris, a lot of the runoff directly into the bay, ruining the ecosystem of the bay. So the students, really need to be educated on how fast we're moving, and maybe in some ways not in the right direction.
Now, speaking about environment and education and promoting that within our youth today, actually we are here as far as Kaiser High School because you were the mind and basically the lead teacher of this great event, back on April. Do you mind talking about that event?
Sure. On April 22nd, we decided to run the first ever Earth Day event. We called it Earth Fest 15. in commemoration of Earth Day and what it's supposed to mean, and what it's supposed to incite and into our students' consciousness, and it kind of stemmed from a field trip. I took a dozen students of mine, ranging from 9th grade to 12th grade, to a forum that was held at University of Hawaii, one of the ballrooms. Naomi Klein, who's a great writer and global activist, and as far as climate change goes, she was giving this talk, and several students go with me, and we sat there for about an hour and a half, listened to her, talk about her book, and about the issues that she feels, were of utmost importance, as far as society and education goes. And my students sat there, and they kept nudging me, they kept elbowing me, and they're asking, like, can we ask her a question? And I said, yeah, this is the place for it. Like, if you're going to ask anybody a question about the environment, you should ask someone who's done the research, someone who's dedicated, who has spent their life, their life, working towards this, working towards change, And so after the seminar, she, three of them actually, three of my students got up on the microphone in front of, a packed house of 500 to 600 people, and they asked their question. And their question was something that I deal with, as an educator, as an adult myself, as a member of the community, as a person. It's a question I deal with all the time. And the question was, how can we get our generation and the next generation involved? How can we get them inspired to become a part of the change and part of the solution, not the problem? And it's this question that keeps me up at night.
Sure.
It's what every educator wants to do is get those students to ask that question for themselves. How can I become a part of the solution, not the problem? And so they asked the question, and Naomi Klein took a solid 15 minutes, and she answered this question, very eloquently, very, very gracefully. She said that, the most important part is that you teach your friends. You bring it upon, yourselves in your own way, in your own communities, in your own cliques, and you make it personable to everyone. And that's what really started the whole Earth Fest. We took that idea back to the students, and we gave it to the whole class, and the exact same answer came up, making it personable. And then so I said, how do we do that? How do we make something as big as sustainability, sure, something as big as the environment, these concepts that, when I was your age, Kendrick, the whole go green thing was very, very new, everyone was going green,
right.
That was the whole thing, but the concept, it was too big. The actual strategies eluded me. I didn't
Sure.
know how to go green. I didn't know what that meant, especially as a 15-year-old. So it was something I couldn't tie into. I couldn't bring it home. Like, what was the takeaway? It was cool and it was hip, and then it died.
Right.
For me, and then it comes back as an adult when I have more experiences and I have a more of a connection with it. So these students, they're asking me, okay, how can we make it personal? I said, well, I don't know. Let's figure it out. So we start calling people.
Speaking about personal and student,
yeah.
As viewers may be looking at the screen right now of pictures of that Earth Fest event
Sure.
back on the 22nd of April. Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk about if you can tell us what happened on that day and what students took out of that?
Sure. Yeah. We had several amazing nonprofit organizations and people that have developed their own personal strategies of incorporating sustainability and supporting the local economy into their own lifestyles, into everything, into the way that they eat, the way that they shop, the way that they dress, little simple things. The question comes, not so much why would I want to, but why not? If you have that option, we do have that option. Several
Sure.
great businesses were there, amazing organizations that had come out to show the students how easy it is, not just to believe in sustainability and talk about it, but also to completely, adopt those strategies in your own lifestyle, like 100%. So it was something great for the students to see. So, to answer your question, Earth Fest, the idea was to make it personal, and I believe the organizations that we had come in, like Surfrider and Sustainable Coastlines, 808 Cleanups, and then the great, entrepreneurs like Leanne Wong, who owns Cocoa Cafe, who has converted her entire business into farm to table, 100% local. And then Bonanville's, the food truck, they've just been around for 3 months, and they've completely turned their entire idea was to go not just farm to table, but also table to farm, complete the
Right.
process, complete the circle. And if it's so easy for them and it's so manageable for them to do that, why couldn't we all?
Mm-hmm.
I was standing with Leanne Wong behind her, she was talking to a group of students, and they were asking her, well, where do you shop? And do you shop at Safeway? Do you shop at, Costco?
Right.
And she said, when I walk in those stores, I get anxious, I get anxiety, and she said, like, I don't know how to shop in those stores. I don't know how to pick out the local things, you know. It's very hard to find those things. And then of course, when you find if you do find something local in there that is 100% local, what about the bag?
Sure.
What does that do? And getting the students to think that way, made them ask another question. Where can I buy local? And that's where the real joy is, and the struggle for an educator is to get the get the students to start asking the questions. How can I do this? Why? Why is it important? Of course, but getting them involved personally. Like, don't you want to know your farmer? Like, why would you? Just like Leon Wong was saying, like, it's so important to know your farmers. Know who's giving you your produce. Know who's giving you your food. Why would you put something in your body if you didn't know who picked it? You didn't know who actually harvested that. And to see the look on the students' faces. When she was discussing that, it was something that really proved to me that doing the Earth Fest was something that was definitely it was a good thing.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, as the viewers saw in the photos of all the different partnerships, you brought in all from lawmakers to all the different community groups. When you first started contacting them and planning the event, I mean, how was the reception? I'm pretty sure our school administration must have gotten concerned, taking class time out just for this one event.
Kendrick, you and I are fortunate enough to belong to a school and to a community, but firstly, a school that has an incredible administration who knows exactly where it wants to go and knows, what's important for the students. And when I first sat down with our principal, Justin Mew, who, it's only his second year as our principal, I gave him this idea and asked him what he thought, and he said, run with it. He said that this was an entirely educational experience and great education. I mean, I don't want to speak for every teacher, but for me, the hardest part of education for me is not being able to see what goes on out of the classroom, not being able to see the real results, the real testing. We can do all the testing in the classroom, and this is an argument for another day. But all the assessments that we do, the real assessments to me is when that student leaves our school, leaves our community, and when a question comes up that pertains to the environment or our society or something that is about making positive change, when that question comes up, where do they stand?
Right.
What is the decision they're going to make? As educators, we don't get to see that, and it's almost heartbreaking because that's what you're preparing them for, And this idea, when I presented to Justin, he was like, he said, it's a great idea. It ties in completely to education and what we're trying to do. It's not just the paper. It's not just what you can do in a classroom with a paper and pen. It's actually choosing to change your lifestyle. Use use the knowledge we have and work together to improve our communities.
Sure.
So he was incredible with it. The teachers, my colleagues have been said nothing but positive things about it. I've also had about 400 students write reflections. For me, it was very encouraging to hear some of the feedback from the students. Not only did they love it, but they wanted more of it. And a lot of them, if you think about a student's, like a child's life, they have so many different classes, so many different, extracurricular activities, so many different requirements, of their family and of their sports and their coaches and all, to offer them something like a farmer's market or something like where it's a completely organic, local and community-driven, festival.
Right.
It's entirely different than what they see on a daily basis.
Sure.
So you're giving them nothing but opportunity to learn something new and see something new and get involved and engage themselves in a different way.
And then speaking on opportunities, I know you're the freshman class advisor. You're also a club advisor of Kaiser's very own Wipeout crew.
Sure.
Can you speak on the different opportunities that our school offers for students, and it doesn't have to pertain just to the environment, but also with community involvement? Sure.
So as the freshman class advisor, I've made it very clear to my students that it's not, you have a responsibility, not just to your school. I mean, of course, in a leadership class, your responsibilities do include, things like banquets and organizing events for the entire school, and you're trying to make, set a positive tone.
Right.
But it has to go beyond that. You have to, as a student, as a teacher, you have to be trying to, affect change, a positive change, and not just in your school, but also see that life is outside of the school as well. Life happens outside, and you have to be involved in it. You have to be connected to it. So my leadership class has been one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Seeing my kids in action, seeing them get involved and talk to community leaders. They wrote incredible essays in the beginning of this year, and they have a huge project coming up, to end the year. And of course, they did the Earth Fest thing as well. But seeing them in motion, seeing them working with the community and proving to themselves that there is more. There is more that their lives right now have, and they have to be a part of it, And so we've been out to multiple beach cleanups. We've been talking to different community leaders, environmental community leaders. They went to seminars. They went to different Q&A period. With Kokua came into our school, and they had a huge seminar, and all these kids came out. Leadership. The definition of leadership, needs to be all, include the community. Right. It needs to include more than just your school. And they've done a great job so far. The Wipeout Crew is another club that that you had mentioned, and it's a group of surfers. The name rightly so. Wipeout Crew. They surf together. And they have a lot of beach fun together. But their main focus is in the environment. Their main focus is when they're at the beach, when they leave the beach, they're becoming a part of something positive, and so they've organized beach groups themselves. They've come out in dozens to to different events. They actually worked as representatives for Kokua at the Earth Fest, so they went through a plastic-free initiative, which Kokua is now running, and they're able to really represent Kokua in a very positive way. They did a great job at the festival, and we're looking at expanding our group for next year.
And I mean, that's a lot of exposure for students, not just within your own capacity as a teacher, but also throughout across the board throughout Kaiser High School. But what can students really take, and what's the next step for students after being exposed to Earth Fest and going out to the community, listening to speakers? What is the next step?
The next step for me, within the school is getting all the departments on board. Getting the students to want to do something for the community. Want them to act, it's more than just doing community service things, and you can't, as I'm a freshman class advisor, of course, and I'm also an English teacher, and I have access to about 200 students, really, and then their friends, so maybe the bubble, maybe expands a little bit, but having the students respond to the teachers and having the students show, that they want to be a part of something, and so far the turnout that I've seen has been incredible. Offering these, as adults, we have responsibility, for the next generation to offer them the opportunities to go outside in the community, and take what they learn outside and bring it to the classroom, and connect those things. I'd love for Earth Fest to expand next year to include the entire community. Have not just have us, bring the community to Kaiser, but bring Kaiser to the community and have Kaiser be the lead on something big like this, and prove to the community that Kaiser students are not just intelligent and not just blowing away scores. They're doing a great job as far as academics go, but also they are community leaders. That they are responsible and they're holding themselves accountable for for what's happening in the community. So I have nothing but great things to say for Kaiser, and I think that it's going in an amazing direction. Yeah.
And then what other ways can we motivate my generation and students to be exposed about the significance of protecting Maunalua, the environment, and embracing their own community, and including a copy of my high school newspaper here, which talks about the most recent situation with the Cocoa Crater Stables. What other ways? There's even social media, let's say.
Yeah, social media it's that I don't really, besides some of the more popular ones, I'm not too engaged in the social media, but is one thing that has come up that students have been able to use and really use for their own benefit, but has been something that my students in particular would like to get into. We've talked a lot about awareness. You know, you know, the students have to be, you know, in the mode, you know, and in the mode of educating, you know, their peers, you know. It's not enough for themselves to be aware and for them themselves to be going out to these events, but also to be using things like social media, as you say, and you know, being a journalist, you know, and you know, responsibly educating their peers in the community. It's great that we have journalism at the school, and our you know, our team does a fabulous job, and you know, I'm so proud of them. Like, they choose, you know, yourself included, they choose events and things that are definitely huge parts of change. You know, they have to be taken. You know, they're very urgent. You know, it's one thing that, you know, Maunalua Bay, you know, it needs care, it needs work, it needs help. You know, and it's not, you know, it's part of the community. You know, to bring awareness to that. You know.
And do you feel that, you know, after doing all these things, I mean, this year, not only as a teacher, but, you know, actively involved in, you know, outside of your, you know, time as a teacher, you know, and exposing the students about the environment, do you feel you have accomplished your goal, or what more would you do?
Man, goals. I've accomplished a goal. You know, this year, you know, the Earth Day thing was, you know, it was a great idea, you know, and it was, you know, the first of many, I hope. It was also last minute, you know, it was a last minute thing. You know, I only had about a month to really plan for it, you know, and you know, with that said, it was a great success for the amount of time that I gave to it. But as an educator, becoming more educated. You know, I love to work with these organizations. The past month has been extremely enlightening for me, working with these community members and learning more about the issues and more about what they're already doing. You know, these organizations have been around for so long, you know, and I'm only just learning about most of them, you know. I mean, I myself live, you know, in Earth consciously. I myself make those decisions, you know. And I myself do beach cleanups, you know. I never leave the beach without things in my hands, without trash in my hands, you know. But as an educator, learning ways to strategize in making my own units and making my own curriculum, you know, a curriculum that's focused on accountability and focused on responsibility, you know, focused on engaging my students in a way that's more environmentally conscious, environmentally friendly. You know, and that, you know, that's the one thing that I know, that now that I've seen the turnout, I've heard the reflections, I've heard their words, their responses, I've seen my students in action. Now that I've seen that, you know, it's so much more important that I start turning my education, my teaching strategies into something more environmentally conscious. Yeah.
And just want to speak, you know, not only in terms, you know, broad sense as far as being an educator, but how important is it for Kaiser High School, you know, and the East Oahu community, Maunalua included, to value, and for students within those communities to, you know, eventually they'll be going off into the career world and, you know, coming back into society. What do you hope to maybe see maybe 20 to 30 years from now with a lot of these students that you're teaching?
Yeah, you know, I have students now, you know, that come back to me and or send me emails or, you know, Facebook me or something, you know, and they, you know, they send me emails and say, you know, that, oh, you know, I love this lesson on this, you know, it taught me a lot about, you know, who I was as a person, or, you know, I'll have some students, you know, and this is one of the great things is they'll say, hey, my professor, you know, in college, this university, you know, and somewhere in the mainland or something, you know, they talked about this and it really reminded me of this conversation I had with you, you know, and that for me is really empowering for me as an educator. I would love for my students to be in a place where they come back and they say, look what I've done to preserve and protect the environment, look what I've done, you know, to prove myself, you know, and that for me, you know, is really, I guess my goal. You know, is to see what they do for the community when they come back. You know, and of course it's not what you take away; it's what you give back. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, and also, you know, we talked a lot, you know, in this segment about, you know, Kaiser High School and, you know, the environment and how we've been role models and being active in the community over in East Oahu. But I don't want to leave out any of the other programs that Kaiser High School offers, including the International Baccalaureate program. So, want to talk more about other programs and other things going on at Kaiser High School.
Okay. Well, I mean, we started this with, you know, where I was, you know, talking about those students who got up on the microphone and, you know, and spoke to Naomi Klein, who's, you know, a world-renowned writer and activist, you know, and those 3 students who spoke on the microphone were International Baccalaureate students, you know, and if that didn't prove what we're doing in the program, I don't know what does. The International Baccalaureate program that Kaiser offers, you know, it looks at educating the whole student. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does. It really looks at, you know, perspective. You know, how can you implement math and science and philosophy and English into a way that is sustainable? And it's not. I don't mean sustainability as in terms of education, but society and yourself. You know, how can you turn these things into something that is usable? You know, and isn't that what we try to do as educators anyway? Isn't that, you know, what our goal is? International Baccalaureate does it at such a higher, more rigorous level that it enforces this idea that you have to become empowered, you have to become engaged and active in what you're learning, and if you're not, you won't succeed. You know, and International Baccalaureate, you know, the entire program looks at expanding one's consciousness to take out, you know, to take you out of your own bubble, your own society, your own community, and really look at other communities to find more of an answer, not a different answer, but more of the answer. You know, they do a fabulous job.
Yeah, and as the time is running out, just want to close the show by thanking everyone for taking the time to view this segment of Maunalua, past, present, future, and also we just want to send our regards and our mahalo to Ōlelo Media and Livable Hawaii Kai Hui for arranging this monthly program. And my name is Kendrick Chang, a senior at Kaiser High School, signing off.